Welcome to the Nano podcast. I'm your host, Will Chernlin, and I'm excited to have you join me on this journey through the world of nano companies. For the past decade, I've talked to thousands of business owners across various industries. It's been an enlightening experience revealing the vast tapestries of entrepreneurship and innovation that thrives beneath the surface of mainstream media coverage. Each week, I will interview different leaders of nano-cap publicly traded companies to learn about their history, what they do now, and their future. As a reminder, none of this information is financial advice, and it is all for entertainment purposes only. Let's start this week's episode. Hi, everyone. This week we have Dr. Lynn Kirkpatrick, CEO of Encyse Biosciences, stock ticker ENSC. Encyse Biosciences is developing a first-in-class and uniquely innovative solution to oral drug delivery. Lynn, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Will. I'm pleased to be here.
So looking through your LinkedIn and such, it looks like you started your career for at least a decade or so as a researcher in Regina. What pushed you to actually get out of the research lab? I know you could have spent the next 3 more decades in a research lab or bopping around different research labs. Did you have a lemonade stand as a kid growing up? Or what kind of had that business itch that made you want to jump into the private realm?
My passion has always been to make new drugs, and that's what I was doing as the professor of chemistry in Regina. I had a lab of students. As you said, it was a little over a decade that I worked there. And academia is a good environment for discovering drugs, but if you actually want to make a difference and be able to treat patients, you have to develop drugs, take it to the next step. And I felt I had a number of inventions that we had identified. I started my first company in a number of decades ago. We're able to take those discoveries into humans, test them. I took that company public, and then started working with Ensysce to do the same in a different area. So it's been a passion for me, really, to make people better in many ways.
So yeah, we'll take a step back to that. I can imagine you spending all day long in research labs, researching kind of these obscure things. And then all of a sudden, did you go to business school and night class? Or how did you transfer your skills over to, and I'm going to butcher this name, Encyse, your kind of first company you took public? How did that first kind of happen? Because it makes sense now that you have that experience of taking companies public and this and that, but you find a breakthrough while you're going through researching labs or reading papers, and you go, I'm going to take this idea public. Say a little bit more, please.
Okay. Well, there was a few steps in between me being associated with Encyse. The first company I started was called Prolux. We were developing my drugs as well as other drugs we had identified, and this was in the cancer space. Interesting question, did I ever go to business school? At the time, should I go to business school? But I've learned my skills by surrounding myself with very smart people who have the skills in different areas than I have. I'm a chemist, a pharmacologist. I understand clinical drug development and now manufacture, the regulatory part of drug development. And on the business end, I took my first company public through a merger with a public company. With Encyse, I started working with Encyse over a decade ago as well. And we went public through a combination with a SPAC. So a different process, but it allows you to finance, and especially small drug discovery companies that have no revenue until they bring a drug to the market. You have to continually finance. So I had to find ways to finance and find money to actually develop the drugs that I discovered. So really, long answer short, I learned through associating myself with people in different areas.
Okay, so you take your first company public, then you have go through the whirlwind of all the paperwork it takes and everything. Then you stumble upon the research that Encyse is surrounded around, or what was the eureka moment where you go, okay, I've seen so much research. I now know what it's like to take a company public. I think it's worth to take this company to the next level, raise money to pursue this idea because it's so groundbreaking. Kind of tell me about that moment.
Okay, we'll step back again a little bit. After taking my first company public, which the company eventually changed its name to Oncotherian, I stayed on as chief scientific officer, really shepherding my discoveries forward until I felt they were capitalized. I then stepped back and said, okay, I want to do something else. I want to step back to the discovery area, and that's when I started working with Ensysce. We acquired the technology that we're developing today. And what we're developing is an entirely new approach to deliver opioids. At that time, we were in the middle of an opioid crisis. Nobody really wanted to touch opioids because of the overprescribing, overpromotion, and the litigation that was happening. So how do you fund a company, even if it has a better idea than had been used in the past? And we really have used a different approach, a very clever approach, which we are using chemistry, not just a formulation of an old drug. But at that time, it was, again, difficult to raise money in the private sector because of the crisis as well as litigation. So we decided to move into the public sector. And as I said, we merged with a SPAC in the area, actually right at the end of when SPACs were popular for merging. So we actually merged with almost a end of life SPAC with very little money. But it put us in a different financing arena where we could access public funds.
So opioids have been around forever and people fought wars over them and such. But what makes your approach different? Why is yours unique?
Well, you're right. Opioids have been around forever, and everybody knows that they're effective for treating severe pain. In fact, there's been a lot of work trying to replace opioids because of not only the crisis, but some of the side effects they have, and the fact that besides being used for 1,000 years, they've also been misused for thousands of years. What we felt is that they're effective. How can we make them better? So our approach is different. We've chemically modified an opioid to make it inactive. It has to be swallowed. You can't just administer it through the blood or chew it or anything. You have to swallow ours. And that then allows it to be a little safer, less abusable. And with a combination product, we can also have overdose protection. This is the first opioid ever to have the potential of overdose protection. So our approach is different from really what was called the abuse deterrent formulations, where they either made a hard candy shell or some sort of gel goo that made it harder to extract the opioids. We've chemically modified and started what we call the next generation, a new class of opioid products. And the reason is these are effective drugs for severe pain. There's been a lot of work to try and replace them, and even the new NaV 1.8 inhibitors have not shown superiority to opioids. So why can't you just make them safer so that you have the ability to use these very effective drugs in people with severe pain? And that's the key. They have to be used properly in the right population.
So when you are, say, pitching your product to someone, is it more kind of towards the, hey, this is a safer result, they're less likely to get addicted in the long term because there's these protections in place? Or is it still just the bottom line, hey, when someone has crazy pain, this solves it?
Well, that's part of it. When somebody has crazy pain, opioids are the best. Okay, there's various types of analgesics. You got aspirin, Tylenol, ibuprofen. You can step up the ladder. But when you have crazy pain, you need something effective. Now, our products are delivering an opioid, and ours are less abusable. Addiction is a different story, and we're hoping that by using our product, controlling pain, especially in the acute space. So we have different types of pain. We got short-term pain and long-term pain. If you can catch the short-term pain and treat it properly, you can potentially prevent it from what's called chronification, becoming chronic pain where you need an opioid for a longer period of time. So that's what we're focusing on. We're focusing initially on this short-term use, control pain, exquisite pain, and then allow a patient to transition to some other analgesics that they can go home.
And so how far along is your drug?
I'm happy to say we've taken this from discovery, being able to say, okay, let's do this in the chemistry lab. We've developed it, started testing in humans, showing safety in what's called a phase 1 study. We're now up to our phase 3 clinical trial. We just initiated that late in the year. We've started treating patients, and we believe we're very close to market launch, getting this into patients' hands.
You mentioned earlier that you've had to learn everything from A to Z in the pharmaceutical industry, including manufacturing. So is that the distribution method moving forward? Are you going to manufacture your own pills and try to get your own distribution? Are you going to license it out to someone else? How do you plan on getting this into customers' hands?
Yeah, good question. Obviously, there's many parts of drug development, and manufacturing is part of it. And that is critical as well to do it by a standard that the FDA is going to approve. So over the last year, we have identified manufacturing partners. We've manufactured on large scale. We have the FDA who have reviewed our regulatory package for manufacturing. We are able now to manufacture on a commercial scale, and it is our plan to do that, albeit we're a nanocap company. That's why we're talking, right? So every step along the way, we do need to raise enough money to get our product through commercialization. We are intending to do it by ourselves. I've got a very talented team. And a part of that reason is because during the opioid crisis, a lot of the large pharmaceutical companies who were sued are also out of developing opioids. So it's on our shoulders to try and bring this highly novel opioid forward, get it into the hands of patients, and then I believe that will be a very attractive acquisition.
So to get this straight, these larger pharmaceutical companies, even though you have a safer solution and you're trying to solve the issues, they still don't want the maybe PR backlash of backing another opiate type solution. And so that's forcing you to actually like bootstrap from scratch and manufacture everything and do every little step. That sounds like a heroic feat.
That's what my team thinks. And fortunately, as I said, I've surrounded myself with people who are experts in their field. I've surrounded myself with an expert CMC or manufacturing, somebody expert in opioid drug development, somebody expert in commercialization. We're a small team, but everybody has this passion because we feel so strongly that this is a great product for people, and it will be an answer in the pain area for people that are scared of taking an opioid anymore.
A lot of the companies I talk to in the pharmaceutical biochem area, they usually have kind of all their energy on one solution, but then always have a few other kind of pokers in the fire. Tell me a little bit about kind of how this can be helpful to treat something like ADHD.
The chemistry that we've developed, we have two platforms. One's called TAP, the other's MPAR. The chemical modification we do on a drug, as I mentioned, makes it inactive. And we focused on drugs that particularly are abused. Opioids, ADHD, methadone for treating opioid use disorder. If we can solve some of the abuse problems, it makes these drugs safer. So our chemistry, and we have now a pipeline of 4 different opioids, 2 different ADHD products, and products to treat opioid use disorder using our chemical approach where it's inactive until it's swallowed. Then added to that, because when our drugs are swallowed, they're actually activated by an enzyme that's in your body. Everybody has it, but it's only in your small intestine. So you can't chew it, you can't inject it, you can't snort it to make it active. So that covers some areas of abuse, but you can still take too much product. So what we've done is developed a combination product with a trypsin inhibitor, and that gives us overdose protection.
So you have a kind of an interesting issue, because a lot of the other kind of pharmaceutical or biochem companies I'll have on the podcast are looking at people's biology and trying to solve a specific problem in a specific way. As we mentioned earlier, the actual problem of pain has been solved 1,000 years ago. You're trying to almost solve just the human psychology behind the pain. Kind of. How does that kind of affect your guys' approach, where you can say, hey, we know it works to the FDA, but like, how do you explain to it? It's like, well, it's actually, we've proven that it's actually good. People aren't going to.
It is. And what it actually does is make us have to prove to the agency that people who use recreational drug users don't like our product. And those studies are called human abuse potential studies. So we actually give our product to recreational drug users and see, do they like that? The answer has been, no, we don't particularly like that, and we'd rather use something else. So we do have this regulatory hurdle that we have to go beyond just showing we're delivering an opioid. We have to show that it is different. Obviously, an opioid is going to be effective, and the agency has tick boxes that we have to adhere to actually get our drug approved. And that is why drugs become so expensive, because of all these tick boxes that we have to go through.
Okay, so Lynn, as we wrap up here, question I ask almost all my guests. You've done a pretty good job of explaining it so far, but after all these years still working on this project, what gets you out of bed in the morning? What gets you excited about this? What makes it that this is what you want to spend your time doing?
It's really the belief that this product can change people's lives. People suffering in severe pain have seen the backlash from the opioid crisis. Originally, in the crisis, how did they control it? They tried to make new drugs. They didn't make a difference. What they then started doing and recognizing that there was risky prescribing patterns, so they've regulated now opioids for people in severe pain, and these people are struggling now to get their medication. If we are able to get our drug onto the market, we believe it will provide access to individuals and potentially change some of the legislation for opioid use, because we have what we believe is a safer product. So it's the push to actually get a drug approved by the FDA.
So Lynn, thank you for everything you do. If people want to learn a little bit more about Encyse Biosciences, where should I send my audience?
You can definitely send it to EnsyceBiosciences.com. That's our website. We have information on the website. We have other podcasts and reports on our website. And we have an info page on our website that you can access to find more about us.
Lynn, thank you so much for coming on the show. And for those of you still listening, please remember to subscribe and review. Thanks.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not provide financial, legal, or any other advice. The information is not investment advice or any offer to buy or sell any securities or to make any investment. The views expressed by the guests are their own, and any reference to third-party products, services, or information does not constitute an endorsement, therefore, by NanoCap Podcast or its affiliates. The NanoCap Podcast express disclaims all liability for any individual's use of the information presented